Well, then what you can do is before you read the affirmation, just explain that this is a continuation from the conference discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you haven't seen the conference, to please go back. We'll do the affirmation and blessing, and then we'll talk about a little bit more, and I'll talk after the affirmation and blessing. How about that?
Okay.
Just, tell them again that they need to see the conference material.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, edit. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lifting. Today's episode is being recorded on 7/7/25. Before we get to anything, though, I open this circle to true benevolence with no conflicting agendas at this moment in time. So, Joanna?
I'm going to read the affirmation and blessing first, or?
No, you got to do the law of
Okay,
one.
sorry, I screwed that up. Let's start all over. I thought I said you'll read that, then I'll do the law of one, so I was confused.
Okay, edit. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lifting. Today's episode is being recorded on 7/7/25. Before we get to anything, though, I now open this circle to true benevolence with no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time. So, Joanna?
We are all one, and when one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. Therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all there is, that only the highest good be done. We pray for you, your friends, your family, your loved ones, to let healing energies in. Let them love you, let them nourish you, and let them bring you to your highest good. We ask for benevolence now to come in with no conflicting agenda, so that we may have this conversation in great understanding. And we ask for malevolent or mischievous type beings to be swept away now, so that we may have this conversation in peace. And with that, and great blessings that we always send your way, we say, so be it.
And so be it. Normally on regular lifting episodes anymore, we wouldn't have the extra affirmation blessings that usually was more reserved for the Q&A episodes, but I suppose this qualifies too. So, this is actually going to be material based on what you've seen in the 2025 Disclosure Now conference material. So, I will go ahead. Telling this tale of the for and against, being one and the same, I proudly now sit in spirit with my family. I am untouchable. This is a channeling of the author of Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, David McGowan. So now we can move on.
So this is kind of interesting, guys, because, so many people have been coming to talk to us from spirit at this particular time, either, certain celebrities who wanted to get certain points across, or now the author of this book. Now, this was the same book, okay, that was shown at the conference. I know I'm not sure how it's going to show to you guys, but it is Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, written by David McGowan. What is really interesting, again, about this book, when we did the conference, we explained that this new disclosure narrative contract went into effect in the late 50s. And one of the all-important things that they felt that they must do is control everything, so that they could dictate the rate at which information was allowed to come out, and they were also allowed to potentially provide a historical storyline that's not even factual, and thus that meets the required contractual requirements that they currently have. Now, again, what we said at the conference is, just because they're meeting a certain minimum doesn't mean we can't push for more, which is what we should be doing. But in order to understand how to co-create what you want, you have to know what is, so that you could decide, will you accept that? Will you not accept that? Will you push for more? And different things like that, with, again, hopefully a unity and a collective consciousness, which we really want to see come about now. So one of the interesting things about the fact of controlling all of the narrative, creating them the for and against, is, again, you have the contract that's signed in the late 50s. Then you have the development of the for and against to control all sides of a narrative happening in the 60s. What this particular author did is he took the time frame of when the wars were going on, when intelligence then was trying to develop the for and against, and he noticed something very, very interesting. When you think about the hippie movement, you think about all of those different people, Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, all of those different singers, the Byrds, all of these people that came about during that late 60s time frame. He actually found something that was very, very interesting. Now, these children of may have had parents then of that were military, in intelligence positions, and also high strangeness of a death toll of unbelievable proportion that was happening within that same area. It also, the story talks about Manson and his group. It talks about even other things predating this time period of people, again, where, some of the debauchery that was going on in the development of Hollyweird, okay, whatever you want to, or Hollywood, whatever you want to refer to that as now, and different things. And this gentleman actually was putting it together, and he wrote this book. He died at the age of 55, I believe, in 2015. And again, you can see some big questions, but what I'd like to do first is I just want to read one little piece of information that, again, I think will help people understand. It's at the bottom of page 23. And again, it brings up these different people, but I'm just going to read this paragraph as a whole, and in a sentence or two, you're going to get where this is going. It says, here we will, as you may have already ascertained, take a decidedly different approach. The question that we will be tackling is more a deeply troubling one. What if the musicians themselves and various other leaders and founders of the movement, we're talking the hippie movement and all of that, were every bit as much a part of the intelligence community as the people who were supposedly harassing them? What if, in other words, the entire youth culture of the 1960s was created not as a grassroots challenge to the status quo, but as a cynical exercise in discrediting and marginalizing the budding anti-war movement and creating a fake opposition that could be easily controlled and led astray? And what if the harassment these folks were subjected to was largely a staged, managed show designed to give the leaders of the counterculture some much needed street cred? What if, in reality, they were pretty much all playing on the same team? And so this book takes that time frame that we tried to, again, discuss, that this contract was signed in the late 50s. They were going to control everything. And this particular author documented what he saw, what's going on. Again, the for and against, but could they all be playing on the same side? It's a very interesting read. I do encourage you. You're not going to believe the death toll. I have to tell you, I'm still blown away by some of that. Names I've never heard before, but he did a really interesting thing. And was talking to Chris about it, of course, and I said, of all the spirits out there, probably this would probably be one that if he had made it to that spirit world, not still in a ghostly form or something, this would probably be a very, very interesting conversation. And so Chris reached out, and he is willing to speak with us. So we're going to speak on this topic, as well as maybe I want to point out a couple of other things things that just weren't said at the conference. That was said to us earlier. I don't know if you want to just bring him in first and then we'll do it, or you
No,
want to?
sure. I do have to say that there is an extreme amount of pressure building, head and chest, um, from from interference because of this. I do want to point out there's not many people on this Earth, on this planet, that have come up with what we've called the for and against conspiracy in the past. There's not a whole lot of people that have come up with this. They usually pick either one side or the other. Like during your Vietnam War, it was either pro-war or against war, things of that nature. Like Jim Morrison and his father George Morrison. So opposite sides of this. And his father was the one that started the Vietnam War in the Bay of Tonkin. So you got to see that they all met here and planned all these things out. And this integrates well into the 100 Years Disclosure narrative. It's integral into the fabric of that. And even some of the times where you thought things were aliens when they weren't, and sometimes when they weren't, they were. They flipped things around and mirrored them. One thing I will say before bringing him in is the whole thing with Roswell, for instance. They have plugged the EVE-1 story forever. The ship crashing in Roswell. And as we've said in the past, that was actually a Martian German Bellcraft trying to get past the firmament barrier of the Earth. So stories like that are there's a lot of diversion, a lot of convoluted stories that pop up. Now I'm going to actually see if David McGowan, are you here? There's a lot of pressure building, and I mean a bunch of pressure building. Uh, I can feel it right in my face, right here. So he did die, I believe, of lung cancer, I believe. But
It was a very, very rapid onset, aggressive lung cancer.
Yes,
took him in 6 months.
It took him 6 months, and then also the thing of it is, when I found him, he was not a ghost. Which this I expected a ghost. But he, as you heard in that affirmation blessing, he's like, "No, I'm in spirit. I'm free. I won. And my life. Basically, he said to me in private that his life was fulfilled. He was fulfilled in what he came in to do. And he should be proud of this. What he did. And he changed the fabric of the energy forever and ever after that. So, uh, benevolent David McGowan, if you could please step forward. Okay. Hmm. It's hard to see, friend. Can you help clear this, please? And our benevolent allies help clear these energies, please?
Benevolence with no conflicting agenda, please.
Yeah. The people could feel the innate pressure right there. That is just immense. This is why I'm all like kind of shining under these lights at the moment. There's this, okay. All right, David, if you could, please. He said my middle finger statue was very appropriate. Wish he had one of those on his desk. Okay. All right. Benevolent David McGowan. Ooh, you are strong, actually. Mm. Affecting the tonsil in the back of the throat. Ooh, ouch. Yes, I began to notice these things. So this is quite odd communicating in this fashion. I began to notice these things earlier on. And in the noticing, I began to get what you guys have referred to as a series of unfortunate events. Also, did I succumb to some vices, as you've talked about in other Q&As? Of course. But in this, that was used against me in the end. But I will say this. The material within this book, pages I've written, this is why I came in, to notice these patterns, to write, to write about this, to inset this into what you refer to as the benevolent Akedic earth grid, meaning, and records, meaning that then this passes along in ways that you can't comprehend. I'm sitting in spirit with my family now. We are perfectly fine. I knew, though, in the final days, I shouldn't say final, in the final days of the human avatar, I knew I wasn't going to be around long. I knew. And I knew what it was from. I knew it was blowback because of what was written. And they knew because it was written, it would make ripples and waves across time itself. It would start with a seed and move forward. This, like what you say, planting a seed of information, you are starting a little pilot light or fire of information, and it spreads, ironically said. And yes, this is how I envisioned it. I, as the oversoul, envisioned this. And you probably are asking, why would an oversoul need to change things in this particular timeline at this time? It is because the ripples and waves, even in what seems on small scale, ripple through the multiverse as well, and through other little timeline clusters. I came in as more of a, how can I put this? Not an architect per se, but just more of a informer, timeline. How can I put this? You would say a changer. There really isn't a rank, position, or name for it. Some like to use words you're familiar with, like architect, historian, a lot of those things. But these are words human, consciousness and soul is familiar with. So instead of going on to those little boring details, how about you go into your questions?
So I first wanted to kind of, I was trying to think of how to do this, but I think first, let's introduce you a little bit more, because this isn't the only thing that you notice. You notice what was going on with this. You question 9/11, right? You've actually seemed to
That's the point you have to question.
be into a lot of these different things, but that's just a little bit more. I want people to know you did more than just this one book. You did other things as well, looking into things.
Yes, question every single thing you're seeing, because the three-letter agencies, they know how to write narratives. They know how to hook you see, with something that you would want to see and something that you would not want to see, the for and against. Even think into your today's politics. And think of this at 9/11. I'll go there first. Think of this for a moment. Who did your government at the time want to move against and want resources from? The Middle East. A lot of resources there, a lot of minerals there, a lot of all of it. Fast forward to now with the weather warfare and Milton and Helene. What was in Asheville? Lithium. It's about resources and acquisition thereof. Also, by causing so much chaos, you do not know which story is up. Now, back it up to 9/11. I knew something wasn't real about this. I knew that those people were sacrificed for nothing. I wanted to look into this further. I started stating, you have to go for the obvious. They put it out in the open. They show it out in the open, like what happened at the Twin Towers. They fell strange. There wasn't enough matter left. There wasn't enough matter from the airplanes, like at the Pentagon. All of these things didn't add up. You have to follow these simple clues. They wanted you to go into this complex story about men with box cutters and these heroic tales and et cetera, et cetera. And I don't doubt that there were heroes on that day. I do not doubt this whatsoever. This is that's not being contested. What is being contested as to what took them off the earth and how and by whom. This was set up from your three-letter agencies primarily. They also wanted to set up aspects of your fake alien invasion narrative, but I want to tell you something about that. There are layers to that you have not been told, that there are, how can I put this? Far less alien intrusions in your home than you think. With the signals that come into your homes, with the voices, with telepathy. Yes, there are, of course, aliens. There's plenty of them. The space kind and the home variety. But with this, any time you see a story that is so large that it encompasses so much of the screen time, so much of your personal time is caught up in this, and you've been enthralled or sucked into it, chances are it is not real, and they are putting a narrative, wrapping in a narrative. In the case of 9/11, yes, did people die? Yes, they did. Were some abducted? Yes, they were. And that's where the alien thing comes in. But with this, they wanted to make a cornerstone. He would call this in spell work as a cornerstone in a narrative, where you have to have, or in film, an establishing shot, or an establishing shot of some kind, a long shot or close, or something to establish where, like, something is taking place, like in a movie, they show a shot of a building or something, and then they go to what the actors are doing. This is why they needed it. They knew if they had a cornerstone, they knew if they had an establishing shot, they could use it for the next few decades. And they did so with that narrative with the men in the box cutters, that Muhammad Atta and the box cutters, all of these things. And Osama bin Laden and all of them. That man was actually one of their actors that was actually from their underground facilities. The original actor is not dead. They chose another one to actually die from the hands of SEAL Team 6. With this, he himself saw a vision of himself in a base underneath Vegas, and saw a man in a suit, a darker skin, looking out over the lights of Vegas. This, and then he found out from somebody he worked with ages ago that was from that era, that people in the area did not know who Osama bin Laden was. The reason I bring this up, is I discovered some of these things and really contested 9/11. I was actually planning on making other books, but this one spoke more for itself, and this one, for me, was a cornerstone. This one, for me, was the establishing shot that set the stage for all that would come after it, if this makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. So my curiosity with the weird seeds inside the canyon, and again, what we're talking about is an area called Laurel Canyon, and Laurel Canyon is above LA, right? Is that above LA in that area in the mountain ranges?
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting place because when you think of the hippies and communes and you think of all of these things, you're not necessarily thinking of wealth. Okay. No. But what is very interesting about all of this is that when even Laurel Canyon was thought to be developed, as they were thinking of in the early 1900s, the concept of putting together the Hollywood, which we refer to as Hollywood, and doing all of that, and the people that were buying the property up, thinking about the territory, thinking about what to do, were some of these people kind of involved with creating that whole Hollywood area.
Yes.
They were wealthy. So the interesting thing about, again, when you get into some of the particulars about, the hippie and the movement and the music, you would think, again, these were struggling artists and different people, that came up from nothing. No, they actually came from well and sometimes prominent families and went there. So the whole mystique and the whole storyline that was being told about some of this, you did a lot of research to show the connections that you're not necessarily dealing with these poor hippies who came up and were musicians at all. It's a totally different story, line that occurred. I also find it interesting that, again, as you start talking about some of these people and their families, unfortunately, you have to bring in discussions that are related to kind of, was there an evil satanic side to some of this pedophilia, different other things that were going along, where you took a hippie movement in general and it was infiltrated very quickly by more satanic, nasty individuals.
Yes, they didn't. They didn't want the whole free love thing. They didn't want anything of that nature. Also, if you hear any stories, and I do mean virtually any, I say virtually any, because I don't doubt that good, of course, comes along and does this too. The whole rags to riches stories. This is contrary to what they want to do, the you'll be poor and be happy kind of thing. They do not want people coming up from the bottom that had nothing and gaining a lot. Any of these stories that you hear that some founder that I will not mention the two families' names, but there's two predominant families in California, Kabbalist families, that have an obscene amount of money and that actually are the founders of a lot of these different cults. One founded a large set of neighborhoods and another one founded a large set of factories, we'll just say. And both are satanic and they worship their gods, quote unquote, and they get others to do the same. Some are in the cannibalistic thing while the other are in more the worship power mode and sacrificial mode. The other one is sacrificial mode too. But with this, you have the story saying that these two giants came up from nothing with only a few dollars in their pocket. Don't you find that a little suspicious that you hear these stories all the time? Oh, they had only a few dollars in their pocket and then they did this and this, that. And it's these chance meetings of where they worked for this one person who worked for this one person who worked for this one person. Yeah, you can. I don't doubt that can happen, but this was more orchestrated not only by the quote unquote gods that they worship that orchestrated this to make things easier. He says, like your whole Thieves Guild premise and your Skyrim, where their nocturnal goddess made things easier, and that is actually integrated into that game series. By the way, this what's in here as well. Video game industry, huge for and against in there, and it'll be one of the first to change too. But with these rags to riches stories, the reason people think they've done something wrong, oh, I guess I haven't worked hard enough. No. Humanity has had one curse put on it after another, has had one set of, let's just say, destiny swapping on it after another. You know, that whole elbow bump thing he likes to talk about? That, but on a much larger scale. Think a factory version of that. Like, say you have somebody handcrafting an object versus a mass production. Think of the elbow bumping thing as the smaller home side type of thing, homemade thing. The other is factory version, mass production. And with this tulpa of sorts has woven its way into that magic, and whatever gods these shitheads are happen to be worshiping at time, either from Satan to Echidna to Moloch to any of them. Hate to name them, but in this instance, when you hear these rags to riches stories, that narrative was written so people thought that having a few pennies in your pocket, you could actually live the American dream. You could actually do this, and just like your George Carlin said, you'd have to be asleep to believe it. This is what he was referring to. You pull a few pennies out of your pocket, you're not going to be able to do squat with that. This is why people are going, what have I done wrong? You have done absolutely nothing wrong. And some people say it's not just hard work, there's some bit of luck in there. This is also what is being referred to. You pulling on your luck threads or the whole destiny swapping thing. They don't want a mass population capable of creating rival corporations. They don't want mass populations of people that figure out what gods they worship. They don't want this. They do not want this. They convolute your airwaves with a bunch of narrative crapola. On your puppet show, for instance, aptly named, what you are currently seeing on your television, and I have been watching this, and I have been watching what goes on down here. No, down here, it's actually all around. Paying close attention. And what you are seeing, and this includes your current thing, like with your Epstein and your Diddy and all of these things, and even the most current thing, where your Kash Patel said there was no such thing as the Epstein list. This is part of this for and against. Everybody wanted heroes in the White House. There aren't any. Everybody wanted these heroes to come in and save the day, and even if a few had good intentions, they're not going to be allowed to do anything on that level. You are more powerful on the level you're sitting on than they are. Some of them are actually jealous of you guys. Not you guys in particular, but on this level. Just like on your galactic level, they're under contracts. You were talking about the branch and bracket trees, all these other things. They're actually more jealous of you on ground level. This is why some incarnate. This is why some leave their children here so they have a stake in what happens here. But back on target, you're seeing, like your Kash Patels and your Dan Bongino's, that weird look they had on their faces. Mm-hmm. This is because a part of them broke inside when they found out what actually was going on. What I wrote about here is what has been revealed. Once you get to a certain tier, they do this so you don't fricking go gung-ho and bust it wide open like what I tried to do and what I did in that book. They do not want bulldozers and ball busters and wrecking balls. They do not want heroes. They do not want saber rattlers, and they do not want warriors. They want obedient workers, like your Carlin would say. They want that, and they want people's spirits broken by pendulum swinging from one end to the other. This guy's a weirdo. He sniffs child's hair. He has Alzheimer's. We'll go over to the guy who's sharp, who's the same age, and he's going to come in, save children, and bring the Epstein list out. What happened? This is what happened. He found out as of today that some of these people are being land blasted. They want to also bring in the hero, demoralize the people so they don't know which end is up. It's just like with your Hunger Games, where your President Snow says rule with hope, and you keep pushing hope a little bit further out, a little bit further out. Hope, hope, hope. Oh, we hope this comes. We hope this comes. We put hope in a savior. We put hope in this person. We put hope, 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 hope. If you rule with fear, you get resistance too quickly. Then what do you think they're doing? They're pulling 100 games in this respect. This is why I wrote what I wrote. At first, it was more of a, not necessarily chance. I hate to say chance because I don't believe in chance being into spirit. This was spirit inspired. Or some say benevolent source, creator, God, whatever you want to say. Inspired, that I was meant to see these things. Some of us stumble and bumble around in the dark, and then we have an aha moment where the light bulb comes on. Mine was just seeing repetitive wash, rinse, and repeat cycles all over the place of the same thing. Basically, you say same thing, same shit, different day. And I was wondering why. Why were these things happening? Well, I got the why. The why is some of this pre-planning, not only from an unseen etheric presence, but human, what you would say, meat puppet. I couldn't agree more with that term, meat puppet, or theater of puppets. The wonderful term. Anything and everything you're seeing on the television, take it with a grain of salt. Even if there are some genuine souls that have walked in there, and there are many genuine souls that have tried to incarnate within those foundations to try to bust it wide open, which in some areas it has worked. I will tell you. It has loosened up a little bit. It has not loosened up as much as you think it has. That is the illusionary part where they're making it look like it's loosening up. They still want to try to find the warriors, the saber rattlers, and the truth tellers, or the truthers. This is why you have your yield in place, you see, whereas some little bit of bullshit's in there, and then there's some truth in there. Then they don't hit you as hard, or they don't hit you at all. That's also telling. So I know I've been long-winded, but I know you have a lot to ask me.
Oh, no, it's great because I think, again, I think, this summer, as we record shows and do different things, we truly want people to get this so they can, because what needs to occur is they need to stop paying attention to the puppet show in order to have the time to focus on what needs to be co-created, that energetic force of co-creation, in order to make an impact. Because again, as we've said before, they'll have you chasing your tail all the time because it will get you nowhere. It'll just keep you involved in stories, involved in this, involved in that, but not making progress towards an energetics that will force more than minimums. And so that's part of the interesting dynamics, I think, that is going on. And it's very interesting because to me, it's the hedge bettings of the God situation. Will Chris and I be able to make any impact whatsoever
You
in
already
this
have.
point? But you know what I mean, to truly make an impact with the importance of, this understanding and an importance of being able to learn how to co-create effectively as a group to push things more forward. And I'm guessing that little, I'm going to call it the game, the hedge betting game about this, what we're talking about and pushing forward. I would imagine, again, it's really one of the only reasons that we're probably being allowed to say what we're saying, you know what I mean? And hopefully won't follow your path.
Ironically, inchworming your way forward. Get it? Like when you have the swarm outside in your garbage can, the inchworming. Think of that for a moment. You have those inchworms that got in your tree. Think of the information think doing that. The opposite of a virus. That is more like a virus, parasite. Think of it moving little by little. What happens if you get one of those? Of course, you lose a little bit of the tree. You get 1,000 of them, and there goes most of the tree or half the tree. This is what happens to them. You put a little bit out, and you let it simmer, and that's what's going on. You hate to have to be that way around them, because most people that I've ever heard of, if they ever found out that they were being oppressed on that level, they would want to go apeshit, and rightfully so. But you are up against a multi-layered enemy. You're up against narrative upon narrative upon narrative upon narrative, and hedge bet, God. You're up against also beings that can hear you and see you, but you can't always hear and see them. They can hear and see you sometimes with crystal clarity. With V2K, they can as well. And I'm not saying these people are omnipotent. They are anything but, and that's the point I'm trying to make. Just because someone has some what appears to be superior technology and superior capabilities, it's anything but. Just because they've energetically dampened some of you and chemically dampened some of you, it does not mean, it means a thing, but it does not mean a huge thing where you can't pass and surpass these things. They always blame people for the food making them fat, which, yes, it does. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, they add the guilt on top of it, psychological, they have the psionic dampening, and they have the viral contagion, such as your fat virus. Think of all of these, and chemical dampening. Think of all these layers, multiple layers. When you think about stuff even as simple as the Laurel Canyon incident, because you have these eggheads that are sitting in the back, and militaristic experts and crap like that, sitting back in some room sipping on a bourbon or martini somewhere, going, okay, how do we distract him this time? And he also had that vision years ago about the scriptwriter sitting in a Manhattan high-rise. Yes, does it happen there? Yes. But in more times than not, it's just somebody sitting in somebody's grandmother's basement doing it. sitting, and you've heard of the aviary group, you've heard of all these little groups. Think of it though, any of them that have come forward, you have to have an air of skepticism. You must. This is an absolute must. They will throw truth at you like there's no tomorrow, but they'll look back to their origin stories for the part that's bullshit. Because they will start with a false foundation, then they'll spew truth from that point on. Then if you go back to their foundation, you're going, wait a minute, what happened here? Then you can't trust any of the other stuff. Therefore, it's confusing. Then you're like, what? Well, I don't know what to believe. Now they got you. Go into it with an air of skepticism to start with, then they don't get you. I know some people are apt to believe, of course, Star Trek world, absolutely, you want this. They're apt to believe that working hard will get you extremely far. And again, in some cases, I don't doubt this. But there are bloodlines out there that get targeted repeatedly too. You guys have had a couple of them. But this information is important to know because in the knowing, things change. Even if it doesn't seem like it, even if it doesn't seem like it's changing, it's fundamentally changing on the ground you walk on. It's fundamentally changing in the path you walk. It's fundamentally changing with all the people you meet. Your energy itself is changing these things. In the noticing, it changes just like a particle wave looking at an energy, how it changes, how it conforms to you staring at it, and even a subject, you watching it as you study it, it changes. This is what's going on. People do not understand the ripples and waves. But back to more of a simpler way of saying this, be skeptical of almost all things, with the exception of one thing, your intuitive side. If it does not feel right, do not approach it. If it does, do so. But also include your left brain in there, your logic center, which is being heavily attacked right now. They do not want people joining their intuition and their logic centers together to notice these patterns. Some people are born being able to notice these patterns. That's why they have the aptitude that these people want. But on that note, yes, notice these things, but also know that sometimes it goes deeper, but know that it is a simple deeper. Simplest explanation is usually the right one. A to B to C to D. Don't go too deep, but just know there's multiple layers to a very simple explanation. I will try to use an example. Say this is more fictitious thing. Say if they wanted to gain resources out of war, they would then get one person that would represent each side in a conflict. Those sides would go to those people and divide them on a fundamental level, religiously, if they're so inclined, politically, if they're so inclined, academically, if they're so inclined, even sexual orientation, if they were so inclined. And even within that community, it's fractured. Now you have two people, one on each side, that are trusted. Then over time, what happens? They trust those leaders. What happens? The saber rattling against each other begins. This is the simple truth, but there are multiple layers to get to that. They have informants and multiple layers, and they also have multiple layers of when certain marching orders are implemented. Say to those two leaders that I said, the allegorical heads here. They are handed timeframes in which to implement said things. Then you come to a head. Then by that time, the party A and party B are convinced that party A and party B's heads are demigods by that point, or that the cause is worth fighting each other over, and they view their country like what's happening now. In each side views it in a completely different light. This is what has gone on. In order to cement this, they showed one as the bumbling fool, and they showed one as intelligent. They showed he said comedy, tragedy, order, chaos. Beautifully said. Theater of puppets, the comedy, tragedy, like in the old theater. those two heads, even if the two heads would die, the crowd still, as you say, self-farms these causes. These are the layers that are generational. They have generational scars. They know people want to get rid of generational scars, so they create a constant wash, rinse, and repeat of generational scars. As it stands, the current bout, if it were to end now, would take a couple generations to weed some of those scars out of memory. You don't want it to disappear completely because you want the history to be preserved and to know what to look for at this from this point in time. Years from now, people will see the chain of events today as almost laughable of how this was fallen for and some regret and how this was fallen for, but it will be learned over. People will eventually come to see this as what it is, narrative.
Well, thank you for that. And we are basically, give or take a few years, about 30 years out from this contractual and coming to an end. Where I'm just asking for your confirmation, where again, being brought up to what you would call a pre-galactic society, where a lot of this major warring is done with. Maybe smaller skirmishes, but there has to be a bit of a coming together. So it seems to be the last bit of scrambles going on to be able to get hands on, like you're saying, earth materials and different things like that going on now, because somehow a coming together has to occur over these next, 30 years. Is that correct?
Yes, you'd say it was done by millimeters and centimeters. Can you do it now and begin healing? It's conceivable. It is highly conceivable. But just know, the further away you get away from that mark, the rockier it can be. Now, if you were to say halt the narrative now, what would this look like? Let's see if I can paint a picture for you. Say if right now, today, at the time of this recording, say if the entirety of the rest of the 100 Years Disclosure narrative, including also the past history of it, were revealed. And it was all out in the open. What would this look like? Your newscasters, and say their puppeteers were no longer there. Say if they were just gone, which is highly unlikely, but just say they were gone. Those newscasters wouldn't know what to do because they have been taught to follow orders and not investigate. They would be very confused for a moment. They wouldn't know how to what to say. They would barely be able to run the cameras. But there would be some that would step forward and go, we don't know, we honestly don't know what's going on. We will get back to you when we can, kind of thing. And they would almost be in kind of almost a catatonic worry state, anxiety state. Then it would pass. And then you would have people that ripple wave go, we don't know what to believe anymore. You would have a state of confusion just for the state of healing. So yeah, am I saying it is conceivable that it could be very effective right now? Yes. What you cannot allow is them to control the narrative. You control the narrative. You are the ones that are driving the ship or driving the car at the moment, or the boat or plane or whatever the hell it is. Ironically said, with 9/11. But anyway, you control which way this goes. Do not get enthralled with the narrative by staking emotion into like, oh, this person gets elected, so therefore. No. Yeah, would that narrative have played out very differently for each side? They were trying to figure out which way to take this. What they decided on, sometimes they do things last second too. They'll go, okay, we got to go with plan B because plan A might not get the desired effect for long term. They think long term. They do things in the short that affect long. Like I said, with the two leaders of the two sides. They figured, okay, we can get away with people being distracted at the first female president. But this is too short of a time frame to bring it more towards that particular effect, that particular communistic type of effect. How can we bring this about where people will take longer to accept certain things? Bring in someone that will correct things right away that they see as a wrong. Having a Alzheimer patient and a drunk, okay, solidified the fact that possibly, okay, that side's stumbling and bumbling. People threw the baby out with the bathwater, even though there's a lot of good on that side. Good gays are getting hurt from it. Good bisexuals and all them are being hurt from it. But then there's also the arts that are also being hurt from it. And also going over to a strictly more religious platform. That is something they wanted to be able to, because they can control one thing more than multiple. Even though that other side has now been considered to be the liberal side, being considered to be embodying chaos, and on the other side order, like what he said, order, chaos, comedy, tragedy. They will always use these platforms. They will go from chaos, bringer of order. Order comes about for a little while. Then some people are blamed for being rabble rousers, and then sometimes you get a police state in there. Sometimes it will go into a middle ground. They don't want people in the middle. They want them constantly chaos, overbearing order. Boom, 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 boom. They've used this since antiquity. They figure why fix it if it ain't broke. They have used this constantly for having puppet states in place, having puppet leaders in place, and having maybe somebody that is extremely undesirable versus somebody that is. What he saw, an example he wishes to use, is the creators of South Park, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, when they were coming up with their World Police movie, ironically said, they wanted to be able to pass certain things past the censors that some people might find gross. So you know what they did? They put something even worse in there to basically tell the censors, okay, this is what this is, but then you have the choice to go here. No, they said pick that one, that one, that one, because they put something worse in place. You see, so it's an old trick. Film people use it, artists use it, people that want to get permits for things use it, people that want to get insurance use it, scam artists use it, shysters use it. It is pick the worst thing, so they pick the better thing. And all the while, in any respect, you're losing more rights and more freedoms. And the more you give away, and the more you do, that and what will you find more and more acceptable? What will you find more and more tolerable that you wouldn't have 5, maybe 10 years ago? And it has trickled in such a way, and also the instead of your COVID and its subsequent vaccines, they wanted to see how far they could bend you before you broke. And they saw in some people it didn't take much. Sorry to say. They were litmus testing the waters to see what consent you would give to bring in something else to control that much more. To pendulum swing it, the fireman and the arsonist routine. This has not changed since I wrote the book. This has not changed since the times of Laurel Canyon. And in fact, they're still there. You have your Bohemian Grove. They pull crap there too, as you know. Any of the satanic garbage, they're still doing it. They have not stopped. They just are better at hiding it because people are under the impression that it's just going to magically go away and they can just sit on their couch and watch TV and do absolutely jack. That does not work that way. It has never worked that way in history. The simplest explanation is usually the right one and the correct one, and you usually have to fight for what your rights are. And just because this is the technological age, almost passing into almost a Star Trekian age, the same rules apply. If you are being oppressed, you have to topple the oppressor, either through energetics or warrioristic means, or a little of both. Co-creative versus physical. It has always been there. It is basically the wrecking ball versus that of the scholar. It has always been there. The dualism that has not gone away. They will try to convince you that it is going into a new age where these things do not exist anymore. That is bullcrap. There is a balance to your reality, and this is it.
Well, thank you. My curiosity is from your perspective now, do you have any big corrections to your book, or you feel you stand by it just as you did when you wrote it?
Stand by it, because the simplest explanation is usually the right one. Every word could be stood by, still in there, with the history I knew of at the time. This applies to every action your three-letter agencies have taken. This applies to every thing that you're seeing on television, every op. And he wants to say, even in your Babylon 5 TV series, they tried to show the good guys as being mentally unstable in some form or fashion or type. They even showed news reporters saying, "Oh, this Sheridan had some mental illness when he seceded from Earthdom," things of that nature, and all the reporters were shills, and everybody should. J. Michael Straczynski knew what he was doing in that. This is what I wanted to set out to do, was something like that, even though I wasn't completely into that, the sci-fi scene, like he is. It's the same shit, different day. It's being presented in different things. Also, his gaming area, it's the same thing. It's being presented in multitudes of areas, like your Disney with your Marvel, for instance. It's there. The television movie industry, it's there. These are not separate components, like your Disney with the two Marvels. They're not separate. None of these things are separate. If you look into all your networks, your communications, to your government, none of these things are separate. There are separate clans that worship different gods, of course, the hedge betting god, you know all about that. But these, and some corporations might be headed by different families and such. You know this part too. But these narratives, the way they operate, are pretty much the same. Exactly the same as written in that book. It's just different names for different instances and different people, but it's the same shit, different day.
Right. So I just, from your perspective now, so this is a couple of things regarding what I would call these cabal family lines that from your perspective, obviously you see things a little bit in a greater capacity right now. So when these cabal families, we refer to them that way, with these servant families, let's just say, after the Tower of Babel fell, you had these servants families, everybody ran away, went to different places, technology kind of failed, couldn't, get things working anymore. So it was protect themselves at all costs, and kind of let's just say the godlike figures, of course, that were around with humanity kind of went now into the back room, but these servant lines that ended up being the cabal lines, of course, then worship them as they do now, okay? In a lot of them, and unfortunately a pretty satanic type way, but they worship them. Obviously, those families and those lines that proceeded down from them, they knew who they were. Yeah. They knew who they were. They knew they were the leading families. They knew all of this. But as time went down, okay, the line, and you had a lot of offshoots to families happening. My understanding was that one of the things that was grown and pruned within the family lines from back then on were certain qualities, certain traits that made them good servants, okay, and made them dicks to everyone else. Really, they were really kind people.
Anything that would dictate compassion, they wanted to weed out.
Right. And so that's a great point. That is a great point, because again, there are people, you would almost say they're kind of psychopathic or whatever. They really do feel that ways. But I hate to say it, that's a favorable trait in these cabal kind of lines, to not have the compassion, because they really do see themselves more than everyone else. They really do. And so
they think they're superior to you, yes.
Right. And throughout time, it wasn't necessary to even tell these cabal families, some of them, that they were of a certain lineage, because they were just behaving the way that they were meant to behave. And so as the lines grew in populace, let's just say, they weren't all necessarily told, the whole family tree and where they came from, but they were still put in certain positions to act the way they were bred to act. And I think this is important, because I am going to bring up, two things. One of them,
yes, they were groomed, yes.
They were groomed. And so that was a part of the practice. And so you could be put in a position, and I'm just going to say, as we said, all of the presidents are from these family lines. They all came from there. They were groomed in a way to be a certain way. And again, here you have Dwight D. Eisenhower in the ascendant seat signing this next contract. But, again, as we spoke at the conference, he had a lot of health issues. He must have had a lot of, after things were said and done, he must have really suffered in a sense with what he was doing, because he was beat up a lot, it seems, before he ultimately passed. However, the contracts were signed and it was going to be fulfilled. So do you agree with the statement that maybe even some current presidents that have passed really do not know always what they are truly a part of, but groomed for this position?
Yes, you're Dwight D. Eisenhower. Yes, he did not want to be put in the position that he was in. Even though he thought he was doing things for the betterment of the country, when he figured it out, he was furious. But he couldn't, there wasn't a whole lot he could do. Your Jimmy Carter was the same way. Where they caught him crying in the office, that's when he first really learned about all of this. He hated it. He absolutely detested it. He was not one of them. Your Reagan detested it too, but he bumped shoulders with them in an attempt to try to fix things. Again, it turned out, you saw what happened to him at the end, how he passed away with Alzheimer's and such. So they like with your Hollywood and your Michael Jackson, if you looked into that, you see the results of these things. Even if they once control them, they start to break out and they nail them. Jimmy Carter, though, he was a genuine heart. He cared for people. Your Dwight D. Eisenhower, he wanted to make sure that society didn't collapse.
Right.
So they peg him because they want to make him the harbinger of doom. They show this in your Babylon 5, as you saw the Centauri have the reptilians take over their world, or the Drakh take over their world, and the puppet chancellor said, "Oh, you can blame me, I don't care." It's the same thing, a puppet. And they showed the reptilians in the background on there. In this instance, yes, you can say there's demons in the background too. There are reptilians in the background too, all that, yes. But with this though, the puppets that are in the foreground, like you said, don't always know they're puppets. They believe they're working towards something good. But you saw immediately on your news when all those people's faces changed.
Right.
When
many people noticed.
When you see those faces change, their spirit's been broken.
Right. They've been read in, basically.
Let's
call it read in. They have been put in their place,
yes.
and they now know. And now you're in a situation where there is no way out. There is no backing out of it. They're not going to mind wipe you. They'll destroy you. They'll, kill you.
Their spirit's been crushed.
But yes. They've been crushed and they put in a no-win situation.
Yes.
And so, in that sense, I genuinely do have compassion, because I don't think people really understand how horrible some of this is. And you don't want to be in those positions if you're a decent person. It's almost like you said, best to be where we're standing right now. But I say that because another interesting tidbit that from your perspective I'd like to know, there was something was said to us where in general that cabal lines would sometimes put babies up for adoption to try and see if new environment could overcome the genetics reversal of the virus and the DNA. Now the virus and the DNA is really what they're talking about, those characteristics.
Yes, if they're reblended, this goes for your new Schwabenlanders as well. If it's reblended in, this will actually not only fix with their DNA, it'll fix some of your diseases, sort of. They're more susceptible to disease, but it'll fix some. And if all these lines were reintegrated, it would dilute down some of these king-making tendencies.
Right.
These particular egocentric, place the crown on their head and say, "Hello, peasants," that crap. It would actually start to diminish that down and blend it back in. So the blood of kings basically would not affect. Now, effect in the future. Now, if you had a baby that was taken out of that and brought into the regular world, that's on a lot of occasions that particular baby would still become like them, but the generation subsequently after would have that significantly reduced, being back into the regular people populace. But they would say at the ground level or at the peasant level. They would see it as basically the worker, peasant, or slave level. And they would treat that person as such, but then they would oppress that particular bloodline that gave an oath back then. They would still oppress that bloodline and go, wait a minute, we have a few cousins out there that we can't have them doing something. We're going to make their lives pretty hellish and have a series of unfortunate events, or our God will do it.
And I'm going to assume it's something like with certain characteristics, you would have the tendencies to succeed, let's just say, in a certain way, even if you weren't rich to begin with. And so
running your potential energy down to where you've not accomplished much. Yes.
Right. And so what it seems to me is that if a child was put up for adoption as a way for whatever this family member trying to save, either the child they got pregnant or whatever by not letting be a part of this, again, they're still somehow tagged and known. I mean, that's the bottom line, it seems. They're still somehow tagged and known within those genetics and are basically, as we're saying, cursed to ensure that those lines are cut off and that those lines cannot succeed. That seems to be what their goal is. Again, I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying this is what the intention is of people trying to get children out. And then, assuming they're found out, which I think a lot of them are, then that child and their lineage is just pruned to the best of their ability, or stomped on, or you know what I mean.
And some people also have a natural immunity to not only telepathy, coercion, but psionic coercion, but also technological psionic coercion as well. They gain an immunity to brain chemistry is just highly resistant. Those are usually the people that are killed. But if there's a partial in there, which eventually all people will be resistant to this, like a virus. You turn off that psionic dampening, all people will become, and they know this, and they know some people are becoming immune, and they know some people are seeing more than they think they should, and they come by with units sometimes and try to resuppress that with chemicals, and they know they can't put the genie back in the bottle, but they try anyway because they're retarded. And I say this in the most genuine sense. They try to retard other people, but they're the biggest ones on the planet because of the fact that they are so vain and so arrogant and so egocentric. But they do not understand their own history. Every time they have come out in the open and done things, every time they have used their narratives, people have resisted them and toppled them. And it is possible even in your world now to do it. It is possible now to do it. People have been convinced because the age of computers, the age of tech, and the fact that people have been dumb and slow and gotten fat, that they're not going to be able to do this, as it's not the first time they've done it. So that's several versions before this. They used chemical warfare before and in one of the previous ages within the food and the water, and people still figured it out. So they figured they'd try psionics with their gods. Tried this before. Been multiple ages that people have forgotten, and each and every time they've had to erase the age because of the fact that people have figured them out after a while. It's like that Childhood's End book series and subsequent sci-fi series, where they erased history and the demons could come out and aliens could come out in the open and nobody knew what they were. They figured they were friendly even in their ghoulish forms. This is what they're trying to do again. Keep erasing bits of history and civilizations, and you hope there's no memory of them, because memory is frequency, as you said, frequency is memory, and that would tap into previous ages where they have lost, and people are beginning to remember this.
But that seems to be part of, again, at the oversoul level. I'm not going to let my avatar forget this.
No.
As many times as
soul remembers. You've heard that before.
And so it seems to me, I don't know why it seems to me that kind of on the oversoul level, it's like, guys, don't try it. You're going to try this again. We're still going to remember again, because there is that complete and utter totality of the library that exists for the
Yeah.
Avatar as well.
And you also, lest you forget, what they tried to do to Tartaria. Tartaria didn't go anywhere. So this is the same thing. They are trying to convolute this, trying to get people to forget them, not only their history, but themselves in the process. This is something that neither is acceptable. You have to remember your history, you have to remember exactly who you are, and you have to remember that you do not die. I know people are afraid of death, and they're afraid that the people around them are going to get harmed. You have to hold firm. This is how they get you if you don't.
Right. And so some of the things again that I didn't mention at the conference that I kind of was told were things, again, the progression of what would be worked on first and what would be worked on last. I would love to say that the medical side of life would be worked on first, but it's planned on being the last right now. It seems like they're on a mission to allow people to die of chronic conditions and different problems for as long as they can until pretty much they're not allowed to anymore. But again, these are some of the things that we try to talk about, because the goal is for us to start together having a co-creation that we're not accepting that we are wanting and expecting more than that within these next 30 years. But people, again, have to get out of certain mindsets of what they're paying attention to, because they're not then providing any energy into the co-creation of something else that you want. And that's really, really, I think, important for people to know about. I'm looking through my last bit of notes. I wanted to make sure that I covered everything before I got rid of them. And I think that I have. And so, again, tell me, this is going to be a really strange question. So you did pass in 2015, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now it's 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Out of curiosity, if you were still alive now, would there be one particular thing that you would grab on like a rabid dog and not let go of? That's happened in the last 10 years.
In your current events?
Well, in the last 10 years from your passing, anything that comes to mind that you would probably be yourself writing another book about?
More likely just your political theater, not just Laurel Canyon. I would have probably made a second addendum to that, and I probably would have called it, the title's a tough one. Even though I love your term, theater puppets, I love your the whole comedy tragedy or comedic tragic theater type of thing. If I had never heard of your terms before, I would have. If I'd known you guys, I would have gone with theater puppets. But I would have gone with your presidential procession, more your voting procession, how that your voting done every 4 years type of thing, and how that actually operates. I would have gone into the political theater. In that respect, evolved it over to the king making of presidents and things of that nature. Granted, I'm happy with this result because it's now the torch is passing to this age and it's going into this anyway. So I would have gone into this arena, especially now.
And as a human, when you were living, let's say from the time you started investigating Laurel Canyon until the time of your passing, I think you did say here towards the end, you knew that basically it sounds like that they had gotten to you and you knew.
Yeah, I felt it. I could feel it that the body was not to be dramatic, but not long for this world. But you just know.
Right. And did you suspect at that time that somehow the negativity side was a part of you leaving then? Like, were you even as a human thinking that things like that were possible?
I knew they had done it, but my soul overall knew that it was fulfilled. So,
right. Right.
See, I knew they'd done it. They thought they had won. We got him. That's their literally their mentality. It's like, we got him. He's not doing this anymore. We got him. He's not going to write anymore. He's not going to be a dangerous insurrectionist. He's not going to try to topple us. Wrong. Because it's like the whole Obi-Wan Kenobi thing. You strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you ever can imagine, kind of thing. I'm not in the incarnation grid. I am in spirit.
Right.
So they knew that once I dropped that big deuce, let's just say, they knew they couldn't stop it. They knew. That's why they didn't bother redacting the book. That's why they didn't bother canceling it out. They can't. That's the thing. Could they screw with the computers and make sure there's no sales of it, or could they just remove it from Amazon or something like that? Of course they could. But there's certain limitations within their contracts that they cannot do. Once something is concreted in or cemented in, they can't touch it. They can kill the person, but they can't touch the material. So, with that said, when they hit me with the lung cancer, I knew, even though I had partially succumbed to vice, as I said before, with smoking and all that. It was abnormal what they had done. And I knew they had done it. But I was content with the fact that I had fulfilled what I came in to do, and I was perfectly willing to pass it to spirit. And even though some people would argue and say, why didn't you fight? At that point, there was no point. So, now, if I knew that I was here to accomplish more, to, let's say, exist for the next 10 years, and know that I still needed to accomplish something, I would have fought to get rid of it, of course, like anybody. But the soul knew when the mission was approaching complete. Now, there's other souls that, of course, have to run multiple avatars in tandem because some aren't fulfilled and some have gotten sidetracked and sidestepped? Yes, of course. But I knew that I was that one, that it was fulfilled.
Well, that's good to hear. And if any members of your family ever hear this, I hope they can take that to heart as well.
Mm-hmm.
That, you weren't shortchanged at all. You did exactly what you came in here to do. And that's nice to hear. So I don't know, is there anything that comes to your mind that we haven't covered for this conversation?
Just be careful where you tread with this. Do what you came in to do, of course. But just know that me going through what I did, even though I was fulfilled, doesn't mean that you have to suffer as a result of going the same path with the information. Just know, knowing about this changes some things on a fundamental level. He always bitches and complains that, oh, I know it, so therefore it changes. Of course it does. But it's not always visible to the human eye. It's visible on the energetic level that's on the microscopic a lot of times, where you walk, where you tread, where what you become. It's not always on the human level. Most people want to see it on the human level. And if you're lucky enough, you do. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't feel fulfilled, sometimes you do. But what I'm saying is, do what you came in to do, but just learn from not only some of the mistakes of the past, learn from the narratives you don't want to be part of anymore, learn from the yield, and learn from the actual factual truth. What is not hardly being seen and said is usually the truth, and it's what I wrote. And I'm not trying to self-promote, but there it sits.
But true, and like we said at the conference, anything that has stayed stagnant and the same for the last 30 years
Run in circles.
is most likely completely
True.
Narrative. It hasn't evolved, it hasn't done anything.
Yeah.
You really need to take a
That's
look
the
at
truth.
this.
Truth of the narrative. It keeps running in circles. It's the narrative. Look at the information outside of that has not been looked at in a while, that you have to dust off. That is where the truth lies. Outside of that narrative. The narrative always circles and circles, like in your New Age movement, trying to circle, as they tried to make it the New World religion, and they backed it up to Christianity. Like you've said before, they're trying to rehook Christianity. This crap won't work either. Just like their blue beam didn't work, their New Age religion didn't work. CIA tried all of this. It's not working because it's not meant to. They are stupid. They try this, they plant the seeds. They might be brilliant in planting seeds. They're fiendishly, evilly brilliant, like mad scientists, but they're stupid because the fact that you're not meant to circle the toilet. No society is meant to circle the toilet. Why do you think in subsequent ages, when it got to this point, there was always some aha moment or some kind of revolution or something in some fashion or form? Because it's a cycle. Why do you think that that always happened? Because when you get to circle the toilet, the cycle always wants to right itself. That means someone, some person, I neglect to say some hero, comes in and changes things. They always have this Herculean definition and narrative behind that too, the hero and the villain narrative. But aside from that, there is something that will always come in and bust a system up if you're constantly circling the toilet. That's balance. That's nature's balance. And that is also the balance of the universe and multiverse. It will always right itself. He's saying also, like in like everything everywhere all at once, where all the timelines are all auditing. There's an audit taking place here to where it would go to the parameters of the timeline. Like the lady at the end, Michelle Yeoh's character, is still having to deal with her issues. That there was a bit of propaganda in there, I might say. But what's true is an audit will write the timelines. You are all in the process of this. And I'm not saying, oh, it's the cabal going away. They're all going to lay down their arms and mass arrest. No, 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 no. They started that shit cycle back in the 90s. And further back than that, the New Age movement was in the 90s, but they started revving up the control signals and all this really, really into the 90s more. They said, oh, there was a big invasion that came dimensionally in the 90s. Your Cobra was announcing that all these portals were opening and all these archons and world eaters were coming out to get you. I suppose that's true, but the ones that were getting you were, of course, there was some dimensional stuff in there, but the ones that were getting you were the ones that wrote that. It's one of those, P.T. Barnum, there's a sucker born every minute. Some of the information was true, some of it was not. P.T. Barnum put on a good show. In the end, that's what it was. Just remember that when you watch your theater puppets, it's basically WWE. The WWE wrestlers are not actually wrestlers, they're entertainers. Remember this when you watch these things. There should be a disclaimer at the beginning that says for entertainment purposes only. And don't be the sucker born every minute, as P.T. Barnum would say.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed this. This has been a lot. I'm just thrilled that you came in to discuss this. Obviously, it's perfectly timed with just having the conference and introducing these new concepts that people need to hear about. And
Yes.
So I just want to thank you again, and I leave any last words for this show to you.
Yes, this comes about, and it's an honor to do this. It's weird talking this way. I usually affect things energetically from where I am, dropping little seeds, and I guess this is a seed. These cycles come up once every great while to be corrected. He would say the wheel comes around. It's not like a wheel of karma per se. It's more of a restraightening or retightening of the neck bolts, yes, Isaac, retightening of the neck bolts. I understand, but the more of a rebalancing, kind of like your Daredevil figure bringing out the criminals to be prosecuted, or the Punisher killing, and that kind of cycle rewriting. In this instance, it's a rewriting of information, bringing out what needs to come out. Just like your Tartarian Empire is being spoke about. What did they do? They added in propaganda. What I will say to cap this off is these cycles come up every now and again. They must be honored. You must notice the truth that comes out of this. Do not get enthralled with your theater of puppets. Do not give anyone the rank of savior, not a saviordom of any kind or martyrdom of any kind. These are stories that are being written. They're basing them on old ancient legends. They're basing them on old ancient tales of heroes and villains and sagas. They're taking things that were sacred and repurposing them for their narratives, knowing that this has been ingrained in the DNA of people since antiquity. Knowing that those previous cycles that people don't remember because it wasn't that anything that was written down disappeared or went into a different dimension or went into a different universe or pocket or where have you, or another planet, another world. Like Atlantis is a legend, Asgard's a legend, all of these. They're counting on that what was within you is not going to come out. That's impossible. It must. This is how these cycles rebalanced in the past. I could go on forever, but I will not I believe I have made my point, so I thank you for having me on.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. And you never know, I might be back. All right. Okay. Yeah, that was he's very interesting energy. There was a lot of interference pushing him around, quite, well, not him around. I want to make it clear. Pushing on me to make sure he didn't talk. This should this told me a lot. His energy, I just saw him sitting around at like a typewriter computer, right notebook, and he's jotting ideas down notes, and he's like he was like a savant coming up with all these ideas, investigating and then formulating them, putting them in a book, you know. And this David McGowan, yeah, his energy felt quite inquisitive, like an investigative reporter or somebody like that. And basically, how he viewed all the reporters out there, going, "No, you're all biased. You have to approach it from this angle, or you're beholden to somebody wanting to just give you marching orders." He didn't do that. There's no yield here at all. From what I can see inside this book, the weird scenes inside the canyon, I do not feel there is one bit of yield. But since it's been ingrained, they either tried to put a yield on it and they couldn't, or they figured they just let it drift in the background. Yeah, people will buy a book every now and again. He's dead. What do they care? Kind of thing. This is why they haven't gotten rid of it, because someone out there wants that truth drifting. And there are groups in the background that not only perform some false flags to get people's attention, but they help and allow these types of things to drift in the background, knowing full well someone at some point will read this book. Knowing full well that this still needed to be out there, amongst all the propaganda that's out there. So I don't know if you have anything else to add to this?
No, I really, really hope, again, that you've already seen the show that we did at the conference and that you're following along with all of the things that we want to continue talking about related to this all-important 100-year disclosure narrative contract and all of the intricacies, again, to help you let go of things that you do not need to be paying attention to, so that you can pay attention to the things you do want to pay attention to in order to co-create what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that, I hope everybody enjoyed this tonight.
Yes, and I will also read this other quote that David gave me as well. And I gotta have my eyeballs on here. Let's see. Hoping I did not typo this. Okay. Being given this chance in an after lifetime, is an honor. Do not ever overthink the things as well as the situations that you see and or hear. It is pretty simple, really. Divide, conquer, control, confuse, wash, rinse, and repeat. Same shit, different day, until all and or most of what you see and understand this simplest of truths. Hang on, excuse me. Same shit, different day, until all and or most of you see and understand the simplest of truths. Remember, there are no other truths, just the hidden and the seen. Nothing more. Channeling of the author of Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, David McGowan. So, at this point, I am now closing the circle within true benevolence and no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time. So, thank you, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Oh, I do want to say it was back in 2016 when we first heard about that book. Okay, it's the series we did a long time ago back then in 2016. Disclosure and disinfo throughout the arts. It was movies and TV, books and music. And books mentioned weird scenes inside the canyon. So, I may include it with this show, or I may link it to it. Let's see how long this actually turns out to be. I don't want to bomb all of you with this big bunch of stuff. So, and too huge of videos, I should say. Information overload. So, I'll leave this here. I just figured it was very synchronistic. He died a year before we were talking about his book. And we started out then, and we even started talking about the 100 Years Disclosure narrative then. And there was a lot of distractors then from entities to a lot of targeting. Hitting that, and now I know why. 9 years later, that's a completion of a cycle. Come on. Even though, as Gene Roddenberry said in the Roddenberry episode of GIC, that's not what those numbers mean. I've been getting a lot of 7s and 9s. Today's 7-7, and it's in 2025. That's a 9. But it doesn't mean what people think it means. But it's basically being self-farmed in that capacity. So, anyway. It is 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday, July 7th, 2025. Thank you. Also, to add what David was saying, as he said about Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, and also on the same thread, Pete Hegseth, he was sitting next to President Trump at a cabinet meeting one time, and you saw this look on his face, like he got into something he did not think he was going to get into, written into all of this, the same reason that Jimmy Carter was crying at his desk when he confronted George H.W. Bush. So, George Sr., George Herbert Walker Bush, he was the head of CIA at the time. So, all these things about Epstein and link with the CIA and everything, that is a cover. It's all puppet show. Yeah. So this, what I'm trying to say is, see, I'm even getting scrambled even talking about it. So, this is what I wanted to put. Dan, Pete, and Kash. You hear this. You have to go into this with the premise that life is eternal. Whoever they threatened in your life, yourself or others, you have to go into the premise, I know the fear of death is strong, the survival instinct, the need to protect, and yes, you're more than likely protecting family at this point. But you all see each other again in the afterlife. Life is continuous. There really is no after or last. That's why we always say, don't take last rites, because you're basically making a Faustian pact. So, if you go into the premise, like these guys know, that life's eternal, and that their life goes on with their God, you have to follow your path and basically say, life is eternal. Be careful what God you're worshiping, because you could be worshiping any of the number of cults like Christianity, any of them, and cult of Echidna, Moloch, Mithras, any of them. Just know that life goes on, and you see each other again. The only way you're going to beat people like this is if you are as certain about that as those other guys are. Certain about your soul as those guys appear to be. So, you have to be a true believer at that point. So, this is where I'm at personally. So, it is 9:29. No, it is 9:28 going into 9:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. Thank you. Also, I left a comment under Alex Jones's posts on X and Threads, basically talking about this is a puppet show. What were you expecting? This is a puppet show. He said he was sick to death about this, dealing with making sure the CIA didn't collapse and all that. You cannot read too much. You have to go deeper. It's simply based A, B, C, D, F, G, but it goes deeper, Alex. If you're hearing this, you have to dig deeper. It's if you take sides in this, you're on the wrong side. You have to step back neutrally and look at the entire totality of the picture. Ergo, the old fable of putting red and black ants in a jar, and they're fine with each other until someone shakes the jar, and then they fight each other. The fact is, you're not going after the red or black ants. You have to go after the ones that shook the jar. The puppet show, in this case, the puppeteers being the one that shakes the ants being the puppets. That the theater puppets meaning politics. So look deeper. So if I could say anything else to you, it's that. Please. Then you said Trump then integrated into that. It was already part of it. Biden, already part of it. All show. WWE wrestling. They're performers. They know their performance just like these politicians know their performance. So, ending this here. It is 9:31 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. Thank you. Okay, another point I wanted to make. Elon, when he was working Doge, for Trump. You saw how they got into that feud. I know it's WWE. You know, Isaac said it was over a wink and a nod. Ironically, the guy that Trump wouldn't pick for NASA was named Jared Isaacman. So I thought that, and he even looks similar to Isaac. So it's like, I'm tall like him. Trump's son Barron is actually Isaac's real height. But in this, like what happened with Pete Hegseth, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, any of them, you saw the looks on their faces. They're not going to be allowed to do what they went in there to do. And I can't reiterate that enough. You go in there with these intentions, there were a few others that wanted to be president and actually wanted to actually have disclosure, and they're being all open about it. This is I find this very, very interesting. So that they were rejected right off the bat, and they're wondering why. Well, gee, I wonder. Okay, it was Project Pegasus's Andrew Basiago, where his father brought him into the projects. Yeah, it was his father that worked for Project Pegasus, the time travel program, also linked to Montauk and all this other such. Sending him through the portal to see, Andrew through the portal to see President Lincoln. And when this happened, of course they chose children because they were more adaptable. They did that for the secret space program as well. But the point I'm trying to make is Andrew Basiago ran for president on the disclosure premise. You have to be a little more, let's just say, stealthy. You cannot just go on that premise thinking that you're going to be able to do that. It'll stop you every single time. Come on. And I said this years ago, but I'm sorry, Andrew. I know you went through what you went through, but you can't directly go at them like that. You have to be stealthier. I mean, yeah, be out in the open and be direct, but like what David McGowan did with his book. But at the same time, you have to find other ways of doing it. Being president, you're not going to be able to do what you set out to do there. That's not the top office. The projects are the top. And some of these other sectors are the top. It's not the office of the president. It's just like in Stargate. Like in Stargate, they tried to show the president was the top office. Not it. So, yes, it was Andrew and Raymond Basiago from Project Pegasus. That's who I was trying to think of. When people go into these projects, some of them are abducted, of course, but then others try to work with it thinking something good is going to come out of like Stargate or Star Trek. No. And also in our own community, people fantasize about, they were this big military commander or they were this big wig. No, you were not. You had no rights there. None. So there were good projects too, but you still were a slave in some capacity, and I cannot stress this enough. Quit fantasizing about it like it's Star Trek world. You want a Star Trek world. Build it. It does not mean that it exists right now. Whether those projects exist or not. Not all of them altruistic, and most of them have servants or slaves in them. In some capacity, not unlike the Belters, to coin a phrase or use a phrase from The Expanse, the ones that are doing the mining in the asteroid belt. But at the same time, you got the ones in the projects. Doesn't matter if it's a Chinese one, American one, Nachtwaffen, they're still taken, just like they did in Project Pegasus. They took the children and they still used them in a project and to further that science. That's no different than Bill Gates wanting to further the species by working on their genetics. That Virginia Gauthier actually said on her death message. So, yeah, involved with the Epstein crap. Yeah, so come on. Yeah, is Epstein an op? Yeah, there's an op, but it's all puppet show. Come on, Alex Jones too, all of you. It's a puppet show. You guys have to realize this. Don't go into it. You have more freedom doing this. A lot more. Tucker as well, noticing away from the network. A lot more freedom. Get monetization, do all of these things. Build your platforms. Do not go into the agencies or the projects, no matter what your reasons are for them. Altruistic or whatever. Either that or self-interest, thinking you're going to get ahead. No. Stay on your own. Right here. You have more power with this. So it is 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. Thank you. Yeah, me and Joanna just dawned on us really, where we were just talking. The reason Trump brought all these strong people near him like Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, Tulsi Gabbard, and also Pete Hegseth. Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. Now that's why they look all dejected, because of the fact now they can't do anything that they want to do. So basically brought him in to stop him, silence him. He's on the list. Trump's on the list. All of them on that list. You see, you heard her in the background. So, yeah. Well, basically it was a shut him up. Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. All the strong ones, the warriors, the saber rattlers. Remember that. Either silence him or either kill him or just dishevel him and deject him. And it was the latter that was chosen. Just remember, to those that are hearing me, life's eternal, as I said before. You see all your friends and family in the end. They want to drag out that 25 to 30 remaining years of the 100 years disclosure narrative, so they just keep distracting. You want that to end, you make them end it. The theater of puppets. Always remember, the theater of puppets. The theater of puppets. See, they have me stand around. The theater of puppets. Hashtag the theater of puppets. They're all in on it. No heroes, no saviors, no villains, except the theater of puppets. And the negative aliens, of course, like the bad grays and all that crap too. So it is 5:52 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. Thank you. Well, there's something to add to this as well. Some people believe that Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, and Pete Hegseth were replaced. No, just demoralized. I don't believe they were replaced. You can usually tell. The same thing with Pam Bondi. Not replaced, just hushed. Simple. Like Reagan said, simplest explanation is usually the right one. So, it's harder to replace people than you think. So, programming is easier. But in this case, like with the thing with one of the channels Michael Jackson said, he said he felt like he was walking beside himself, and it was the programming taking place. In this, it was just good old-fashioned fear tactics. So, easier to threaten somebody's family. So, but that's why you have to know life's eternal, and you all meet each other in the end on the other side. That's how you have to go into this. So, it is 6:25 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. Thank you. One more thing I'll add that showed up today, it was from a Gutfeld episode yesterday. They went over the Epstein thing. Went over defending Bongino and Kash and them, but Patel and him, and Hegseth and Trump, and basically said, okay, they're making it obvious they're doing a cover-up. They're basically telling you what they're doing, essentially. Okay, I can buy that. But the puppet show, like I said, they don't acknowledge a puppet show, but they will acknowledge, okay, they're plainly telling you something's wrong, or they're doing something by overtly covering up and overtly, saying that Bondi, said, oh, she had the list on her desk. Now there's nothing. And she was going to say something. He hushed her, and then basically, that was that. Just like with Roswell, with Jesse Marcel talking about the actual flying saucer. Then he was made to show the weather balloon wreckage. It's kind of similar, actually. It's the same tactics, same shit, different day. Why fix it if it ain't broke? So I'll leave that here. It is 7:28 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Thursday, July 10th, 2025. Thank you.